Royce, can you give us some more specifics on what you thought the difference was between what you saw the reality on the ground in Minneapolis to be after George Floyd died versus the way the media was portraying?
George Floyd was murdered, by the way. He didn't just die, number one. And I'd also like to know how you define intersectionality as well.
Yeah, so what I saw, well, let's
I didn't mean to hijack your question, Vince, either.
let's just go back and you know, I can help sort of parse this out. First of all, I played in the Big Three in 2019 with Steven Jackson. So he's a friend of mine, co-worker, brother of sorts. Yeah, he's a good dude, really good guy, man. And so when the George Floyd thing first happened, I didn't know about it, right? I was in the middle of writing an open letter to LeBron James, which later became a 265-page book. And in it, I had talked about the rise of, or the decay of, American culture and Western culture from post-World War II on to, you know, the Donald Trump presidency. That was sort of the time frame that I had discussed these things, and the rise of the CCP and the Uyghur genocide as well. So, you know, I was in the middle of writing that, and this George Floyd thing happened, and somebody sent me the video. And obviously the first day was, you know, just sort of an emotional roller coaster, and watching the video and hearing people's reaction. And then I found out that Steven Jackson was very close to George Floyd, and I knew he was going to be coming to town. So we had a conversation about his arrival in Minneapolis. And that's right around the time the protest or the unrest had broken out. And I remember being down and seeing what took place at the 3rd precinct, where people had gathered outside of the precinct, and they weren't peaceful, but they hadn't gotten violent yet. And the riot control tactics from the police department were already in full tilt. I mean, they were tear gassing and the whole nine before anything had really gone violent. I had gotten down there later on that night and wanted to see it for myself up close. And by that time, I mean, there was those iconic images where the people of South Minneapolis had taken the carts from Target and barricaded them up against the precinct. And they eventually brought the riot control, you know, people out, officers out, moved the carts out of the way. And then that's, I think, over the course of that evening is when things kind of got really, really violent. And then in the night, you get an entirely different group of, you know, protesters than during the day. And before you know it, you know, fires had broken out at AutoZone. I mean, I was literally right there in the neighborhood when this took place. And as soon as the fire broke out, you know, I had left the area. But when I got home, I called about 30 to 40 of my professional athlete, you know, brotherhood that we play together here in the city when everybody's in town, and keep in touch and try and support each other. And I said, listen, this is getting out of control. We have to do something. We have to do something to change the narrative here. Because, you know, for me, and what that was for us was peaceful protests. So I organized one, and it started at US Bank Stadium, and we marched to the Federal Reserve. We marched down First Avenue. We marched down University Avenue there on the University of Minnesota campus, all peaceful. Didn't have one fight, didn't have one fire, didn't have one arrest. And what I saw was that the narrative was one of anarchy, pretty much, right? It was violent unrest. And that wasn't how everybody in the city felt about the situation. And we had over 7,500 people join our protest that day. And then the next one ended up being about 20,000 people. Nobody could have expected that. But over the course of the months, we did about 7 or 8 protests, and we must have gathered about 100,000 people, and none of it went violent, right? So there was a huge contrast between what was being shown on TV by CNN, MSNBC, and the liberal establishment, and what was going on. Now, they did take the time out to highlight me as a rising civil rights figure, but they didn't want to give me any time to talk about the issues because their position was in direct opposition of mine in terms of belief about what was really going on and what was wrong with this country. So a classic 3-card Monte, where they go, hey, Royce is doing these peaceful protests, and look at this guy who's trying to help the country in this time of turmoil, but we're not going to give him too much time to explain his position on the issues because they don't align with ours.